What's up, y'all, and welcome to another installment of the For the Gram podcast. This is a show where I, Jaksyn, am your host, and I take you through something of interest to me, whether that's something new happening in the world recently, whether that's like some current event or something like that, or it's just like a hip trend that everybody's jumping on or something, but all at the same time, it's going to be relevant enough for the gram. This episode is coming out a little late, but that's okay. I have been swamped the last week with something that my college does called the Red Eye Film Festival. So if you are unfamiliar with this concept, it is a week-long film festival that my college does where we get prompts on a Sunday at 7 p.m., and then we have until the next Sunday at 7 p.m. to make a short film. So it's originally called Red Eye because back when it was first started, you got your prompt Friday night, and then your final film was due Sunday night. So it was originally a 48-hour film festival, and you didn't sleep. Now it's a 7-day film festival, and you still don't sleep. So Red Eye has stood the test of time at my college, and I've participated in it. This has been my third time. And so all of my films have been widely different in terms of theme, in terms of genre, but that's mainly just because the prompts that you get are somewhat constraints as to what your film needs to be. So the first year that I did Red Eye, it was a total surprise. I was like, what is this going to even look like? And so it was me and a good friend of mine, Corey Peters. He is graduated now and he's off doing real life things. He and I were a crew of two, and we made a Red Eye film my freshman year of college. And our prompt was, what was it? It was our title. So we showed up to the prompt launch day, and there were a bunch of envelopes sitting on this table. And inside the envelopes were our prompts, right? And the prompt was a name of a song, of a pop song from the 1950s, and those were the titles of our films. And so the one that I got was A Slice of Lemon, and so we left the prompt launch and we were like, what do we even do for this? Like, a slice of lemon? Are you kidding me? Like, some of the other groups got really, really good ones. Like, one of them was called The Last Letter. One of them was called The Man in the Yellow Shirt. One of them was called I Would Change My Mind. And then the one we got was A Slice of Lemon, which was kind of in the middle of all of them, because another one of the bad ones was White Horses Don't Cry. And we're like, what do you even do for that? And then another one was called Beans in My Ears. And everybody's like, are you kidding me? Like, anytime somebody read off a good name, you were like, oh no. Anytime somebody read off a bad name, you were like, oh, at least I didn't get that one. But we all had the constraint of, this is the title of your film, and then you have to build a story based on that title. And so we made a buddy cop detective movie in 5 minutes. So it was a 5-minute story, and the biggest thing we're told during Red Eye is let the story exist outside of your 5-minute time frame. And so we built up all this lore, and it was great. It was so fun. I had a blast with it. The movie's terrible, but it was a really fun time to get to make a thing in a week and see what everybody else made in a week and stuff like that. And then fast forward to my sophomore year, I'm doing the Red Eye Film Festival again, my freshman year, I was required to do it for class. This past year, I was required to do it for class. My sophomore year, I was not in a media arts class my fall semester, so I just wanted to do it for fun. And so I got together with some of my friends, and we made a romance because our prompt was genres. So we got a genre and a prop. And so the prop had to play a prominent role in the film, and the genre was the genre of your movie. And so we got romance, and we got a chess piece as our prop. Our prop was a queen chess piece. And so we originally wanted to call it en passant, which is a special move that pawns do in chess. But during this year of Red Eye specifically, I remember sitting in the editing classroom in, this was a couple days before the actual prompt was, before the actual film was due. And we were like, dude, I never thought I would miss the titles. Like, this was not, titles are not the easiest thing to come up with unless you come up with them right away. And so we may or may not have asked a chatbot to write our title for us, and it gave us some good guidelines, and we came up with our title based off of that. But we made a romance. We turned a studio on our campus into a jazz club, which was fun. Part of one of the best parts about doing a short film festival is all the filmmakers get together on the Monday night with their friends and family and things like that, and we watch all of them together, and then we have an award show and things like that. We have judges who watch them the night before and determine who's going to win all of the awards. And then afterwards, you just have a little reception with a bunch of filmmakers who made a film in 7 days. And everybody's like, oh my gosh, where did you shoot this location? Where did you shoot that one? I really like this part of your film. How did you get that? It's crazy. And so that's building the foundational stuff relationship wise between all the different filmmakers on my college campus. And so that's always a fun part about it too. And my film last year, my romance, it was called At First Glance, and it was about a guy who saw a girl in a jazz club singing, and he immediately became obsessed with her, and he was hyping up the courage to ask her out. And then he gets to the jazz club the next night, and she's not performing, it's somebody else. And so then he leaves all distressed, and then they end up finding each other at a park. And he gives her flowers, and it's really nice. And then this is all juxtaposed with an older couple playing chess in a park. And that is sort of mirroring the story throughout. And then at the end, you realize that I'm about to spoil my own film, but at the end, you realize that the older couple that we've been following is this younger couple that the whole story is about, and they end up together and they grow old together, and it's so fun. And so that was a really, really good time. I enjoyed making that film so much, and we won Best Story. We have a variety of awards at this short film festival that we do. And the one that we think is arguably the best one is Best Story, even though there is a Best of Show and stuff like that. And so we won Best Story, and that is the only award that I have won to this day. And I'm so proud of it. The story, my friends, Colton Pringle, Holly Harris, and I worked tirelessly on writing one Best Story, and we're like, if the story's good, it doesn't matter what the visuals look like, what the audio quality is, but you can have a good story and then people like connect with it in a sense. And so we just wanted to make a nice little heartfelt film, because everybody for Red Eye, because they're like, it happens during a school week. So a lot of times people film at night. And so there are a lot of dark themes and a lot of dark films. And so we just wanted to make a nice lighthearted story, and we did, and it was really fun. This past year, we got our theme, and it was ones. So you had to do like a one thing. So it was like you got a card that said you had this one constraint on your film. And so there was like one lens. You can only use one lens. You can only use one light. You can only use one location. You can only use one color. You can only use one actor. You can only use one line of dialogue. That was the constraint this year. And then on each of the cards was a colored envelope. And the color on the envelope was the color you had to prominently use throughout your film. So the group that got one color was really able to just go off of that. And then they gave us the option to switch afterwards. But if you swapped, you could not swap again. It was like you only did the one that you got post the swap. And we were happy with ours. We got one lens and the color purple. And so we were like, this is an interesting prompt. And so what we did was we got into our writer's room and we immediately started talking story. And we were like, what are we going to do? And everybody seemed to gravitate towards, let's make a satire of trashy reality TV. And so we did. It was really fun. We wrote our script Sunday night into Monday. And then we filmed everything on Tuesday, and then Wednesday through Saturday was our time to edit the film. And it took almost all 4 of those days, just because we're all college students, we're all busy. And so we spent a lot of time on the edit, and I think it's really cool. I had a fun time with this one. I am super excited to see some of the other films, but like there's also that point in the production process where you've watched it so many times that you've grown desensitized to it, and so you hate everything, and it's part of the process. But then everybody watches it and they're like, oh my gosh, that was good, and I'm like, it was better than I thought. So that's always the thing that I look forward to during Red Eye, as well as watching some of the other films, because you always take it in a different direction than some of the other groups are going to. Like, you never know what the groups are going to decide to do with their prompts and things like that. So that's always exciting. And then, like I said, we have the big showcase, and it's like a red carpet event, and like the filmmakers usually dress up. I've worn a suit every year, and I love it. I just get an excuse to dress up, and it's super fun. And then by the time the Wednesday after rolls around, everybody basically forgets about it. They're like, Red Eye happened, and that's about it. And so I get to get some sleep now, because I've had a couple crazy weeks in a row. I had Tech Week for a show, and then that went directly into Red Eye. And so my sleep schedule is all out of whack right now, but I am trying to get back to that as soon as possible, because I have another show coming up here pretty soon. So we'll get that all figured out as that arrives. But something that I noticed specifically during Red Eye is everybody has their own spin on creative ideas. And something we learned about in one of my classes was there's really no such thing as an original idea, because when you look at it in the whole grand scheme of things, everybody wants a slightly different version of something we already have, right? it's called remixing, right? We want something slightly different, but with the familiar sensation of something we already know. And that's always been interesting to me, because then you like go back and you watch certain like short films and certain films, and you're like, oh, this film was the inspiration for that. Like I remember one film, the Red Eye Showcase, my freshman year, they literally recreated the letter reading scene from Ratatouille in their film. And I was like, that's genius. Like taking some of the things that you've experienced in your life and you know so well, and you're like, I want to pay homage to that. That's a super cool thing that is evident in a lot of different areas of the film industry. Like we looked at Wes Anderson and how he literally recreates beat for beat a Hitchcock scene, but he makes it his own and he puts his own unique style on it. So it's like if you're a Hitchcock fan and you watch a Wes Anderson movie, you're more than likely to pick up some of the things that he pays homage to throughout that whole sequence of events. And it's really cool because then you pick up on things throughout watching all these different films that you never would have if you started with that. And that's a cool thing. And so it's like I am now watching things under a very different lens than I ever have before, because I'm like, oh, so this thing is a reference to this, and this director is all referencing this, and then it gives me more respect for some of the directors of the 30s, 40s, and 50s, because they were the people who started all of these things. And so that's super cool to see, is that it's not exactly like stealing unless it's like shot for shot the same thing, but it's like slightly giving a nod to this thing, because you're like, oh, so I am really influenced by this director's style, and I can like emulate that in my own film, in my own direction. We watched I think it was Brain Games segment in one of my classes that was like, okay, so we're going to drive two graphic designers in the same route through New York City, and then we're going to get them into this room, and we're telling them you have 4 hours to design a logo for our product, and then you have to pitch it to our execs in 4 hours. And so they work together, and then they ultimately come up with a design that they really, really like, and they're like, oh my gosh, this is so original, nobody's ever done this before. And then you get to the pitch, and they give their pitch for their product design and stuff like that. And they're like, okay, so this has never been done before. Look at this thing. And then one of the execs in the pitch meeting goes into the back room, grabs another poster board, brings it out, unfolds it, and it's the exact same pitch that they just gave. And they're like, how did you know how to do that? Like, this was such an original idea. And it's because they drove them on a very specific route to get to the building. Because when you're put in a short time constraint, you're most naturally going back to your short-term memory, right? So, like, the things that you just saw within like an hour or two of coming up with an idea are typically the first things that you pull inspiration from when you are creating a new thing. So they literally planted this idea in their heads just to see if it would work. And it did. Like, it was like beat for beat the exact same. And it was crazy. And then they like went back on the drive, and they were like, so we saw this teddy bear in the window, and so that was where they got the teddy bear. And then they saw this pizza place that had this thing, so that was where they got the color scheme. And then they saw this place that had this thing, and that was where they got the name for the product. And it was like, whoa, we are so heavily influenced by the things that we see. and by the things that we hear. And so it's crazy to think about when you do some of those things. And like something that I have been trying to do with this podcast especially is the titles. If you go back and look at the titles of my episodes, all of them are references except the very first episode. Not the 0 episode, but episode 1. Every single title is a reference to something. And I have done that on purpose just because I speak in references. I speak in pop culture references constantly. And I am like, it's part of my vernacular. Like I never know if I'm ever saying anything original because half the words that come out of my mouth, I actually know like 80% of the words that come out of my mouth are like from something else. It's always been a thing for me, just saying words that I've heard from other things. Like I quote certain movies like the back of my hand. Like I know the entire scene from Under the Van in Toy Story 1, and I have not seen Toy Story 1 in over a year, and I could still word for word tell you the fight that Woody and Buzz have underneath the van, and it's crazy just because it just lives rent free in my brain. And then there are movies that are like such like deep cut references that I talk about all the time, and my friends from high school, they hated it. They were just like, dude, that was a really deep pull. Like, why did you think about that? And I was like, oh yeah, so it's like this one scene in Brother Bear where the mooses, I don't know what the plural of moose is. I think it's just moose, but where they're on the back of the mammoths and they're counting trees and stuff like that. And they're like, bro, I haven't even thought about Brother Bear in like 17 years and we're 18. And I'm like, yeah, I guess. I don't know. But I do that constantly. And I'm like, some of my friends do it, but they're more obscure lines than I ever work with. And I'm just like, what? And they're like, name that movie. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about right now. You just said 4 words that could literally be in any movie whatsoever. And they're just like, it's Spider-Man Homecoming. Gosh. And I'm just like, sorry, I didn't get the memo on that one. But like, it's weird that they've just worked their way into my average vernacular. And like, I speak solely in references a lot of the time, which is why I thought it would be fun to throw references as titles and see if people got that. I have no idea. If you did, let me know, because I think I am not going too deep with any of them. A lot of them are like very surface level. Like I have a Sandlot reference in one of them. You have to figure out which one that is, I guess. I'm not going to tell you because I don't remember what episode it is. I've done 12 of these at this point, so I don't really know. They all sort of blend together at this point. But that sort of begs the question, is anything in today's world like original? Like, are we all just pulling from separate things that we already know? Like, think about the MCU. It's like, it is different now. There is a noticeable difference between some of the newer stuff versus some of the older stuff. But, like, we know now that, like, everything goes through a formula, right? It's all sort of the same thing over and over and over again. And we love that. We like seeing repetition and things like this because it's a form of ease, relaxation for us as viewers. We like seeing things like go the way we expect them to, which is why twist endings are such a big thing in pop culture, just because everybody's like, what? We were not wanting that to happen. Why did you do that? Things like that. And so, like, I'm trying to figure out, is anything ever original? Like, was the first twist ending such a shock to people that they were like, whoa, this is insane. What are we even doing now? And, like, I'm not sure. Like, is anything we say original, or is it all taken from outside sources? Like, I know my high school never did senior quotes or anything, but I would always say that I was never philosophical enough to say anything original, and I think that's real. I'm like, how much of what we say is just quotes of other people? Like, I'm not really sure. For me, it's a lot. It's a lot. And so, like, I have to be careful what I say around certain people, because I know that goes the same for, like, repeating yourself, right? Like, if you're around a group of people and you say a thing, and then you're around another group of people with one of the people from the earlier group, are you going to say the thing the exact same way, or are you going to say it differently? Like, I need to figure that out. Like, I don't know what all goes into the psychology of that, if it even is a psychology thing. But in the end, I just think we all are prone to imitation, which is another thing that we talk about in one of my classes, because I'm a theater major, as well as a media arts major, is like, theater is the art of imitation. It is the art of taking something you know and replicating it for an audience and things like that. It's also making a fool of yourself sometimes, or just trying to make yourself appear a different way than what you already are. But, like, even when you draw character inspiration for things like that, for things like films, for things like theater, things like that, it's for things like writing. It's taking bits and pieces of different characters that you already know and morphing them until there's something new. And I think that's kind of crazy. I think that's something that I need to learn more about, just because it's really interesting, but it's also something that we as, like, a society tend to focus on more. Like, we all see the people on social media being like, bring back the original content. We want to see people do original things over and over again. But, like, if you even look at YouTubers, like, what is Mr. Beast doing that everybody else is not, right? He's taking bits and pieces of things that have been done before and making them into his own thing, and then he's doing his own challenges on top of that and stuff. But, like, look at, like, reaction channels. Like, there are so many different people who do reaction channels, which is just watching a video and giving commentary on it and stuff like that. That's not original. That's just you sitting and talking about a thing that's not even original. And then, like, think about podcasts as a medium. Like, everybody wants to start a podcast, and, like, none of the podcasts, I think, are truly original. I think a lot of the more successful podcasts are remixes of, like, talk shows and radio and things like that. So, and then there's true crime podcasts, which again is not original, because you're just reading a story of, or, like, dissecting a murder investigation that already happened. Like, I always said before getting into high school that I wanted to be a cool history teacher, because sometimes reading original things is boring. Like, reading history books, which are people's takes on original events, it's boring. Some of it's boring. And so I liked to think that I would be a cool history teacher who made things sound more interesting that were actually just really, really boring. Like, I could go off for 40 minutes on the Federalist Papers and make it interesting. Like, it's such a delicate topic to talk about. Like, I have not taken an actual formal history class at my college, but I sat in on the final review for one of the classes. I taught somebody more in 45 minutes than they learned the entire semester, just because I made it interesting. I made it applicable. And so it's like, sometimes it's not even the fact that you're taking something and making it your own. Sometimes it's the fact that you're taking something that people already know and you're making it interesting. You're making it memorable, things like that. And so I don't even know. Like, what's y'all's take on that? Like, is anything actually original? Do we have any original content anymore? Is it all just things that are amalgamations of other art forms, other pieces of work, things like that? Like, inspiration does go a long way, but like, where is that line that it's like, I'm inspired by this thing versus I'm directly ripping off this thing? But that's like another thing that has been prevalent in the industry recently with AI development and things like that, is like ChatGPT is like really, really good for idea generation, because sometimes you just can't get the ball rolling yourself, but they also lack that human connection to things, because that also is a big important step. Is if people don't believe that something is like feasible to happen, then it's not going to fare very well in the grand scheme of things. And so like that's just like a thing that, like, AI is a good tool. It's a good resource to generate ideas when you're hitting that slump and you can't like think straight. But it's not something that can be the replacement for something that we know as humans is a very human thing. It's like the thing with design too, is you can use an AI filter to adjust everything and make everything look crisp, but you can't use an AI filter to make somebody feel something when they look at a thing. And that's the difference between human and AI stuff from what we at my college have deduced. And so it's a weird thing to put into one specific box, but like, I don't really know where that line is and all that stuff. Like, is anybody who says a reference to anything ever copywriting, like infringing on copyright laws? Like, that doesn't make much sense, because people do it all the time. They're like, oh, this funny part in this movie where you're like, this is good. I can watch the entire first 10 minutes of The Prestige and I know all the words. I know everything that is said in that opening monologue. I know everything that is said. I know all the words to the "you can't handle the truth" speech, because I delivered it my junior year of high school, and I still have it in my brain. Like, it still exists in my vault somewhere. It's like, anytime you need to pull out this really interesting party trick, you can say the entirety of this speech. And like, that's the thing with like music too. It's like, if you know all the words to a song and you're just singing the song, is that IP infringement? As you're just walking around and you're singing a song that you really, really like, but you're not actually listening to it. Is that a thing? Like, I don't know. Like, what levels are like feasible in this certain realm of discovery? I don't even know. Like, it's a really interesting thing to dissect as I'm reflecting on my short film that I made for Red Eye this year. I need to make more short films. I really like the process. I don't like writing them. I don't like editing them, but I need to make more stuff, just because I think it's a cool process to do over and over and over again. Because there's an example of sampling in music all the time. Like, there are songs that literally sound exactly the same because they've been sampled. And I don't know what the limit is for a sample. I think you just need permission from the artist. But if they're dead, I'm like, what do you do then? And then there have been so many lawsuits recently that have just been like, you stole my music. Like, this is not good. And then Ed Sheeran went on the radio and he was like, you can't copyright a chord progression. Like, that's not how that works. Like, there's a running theory that almost every song can be played on 4 chords depending on what key you're in. And I think there's an element of truth to that. Like, people have made compilations of all these songs that can be played on the same 4 chords, and it's a lot. Like, the videos are probably like 16 minutes long of just little bits of songs that are all played with the same set of 4 chords, and they're called the Holy Quaternity of Chords, and it's like B minor, E minor, G major, and C major, and they're just those 4 chords for every song. And so if you learn those 4 chords on a guitar or on a piano, that's your trick to learning almost every song out there. And I know it was like a big thing with Olivia Rodrigo and like Paramore, like almost the exact same songs. But then it's hard to find something original too, because like if you look at the song My Sharona by the Knack, everybody after hearing that song has been like, that bass lick is so simple. How did nobody think of that first? Like the bum 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 bum, like that whole thing. Like, that's just so simple. And why was the Knack the first musician group to think of this very simple bass lick? But yeah, that all being said, I think I'm going to jump right into this week's edition of 3 Things You Need to Know. Some of these things are like, they're topical, but they've already kind of served their purpose. Like, number 1, I have Dame Maggie Smith died. It was so sad. She was 87, and everybody was like, wands up to Professor McGonagall or something like that. And it was really sad. She was known for playing Professor McGonagall in the Harry Potter movies. She was known for being Violet Crawley in Downton Abbey. She was a very special actress of this generation that is slowly starting to fade away. She is still, in my mind, one of the most perfectly cast actresses in all of the Harry Potter series. I think her portrayal of Professor McGonagall is the best that ever could exist, and I am really sad that she's gone now. But it's like James Earl Jones just died. Like, he was in a lot of stuff, and he's probably most prominently known for Darth Vader. He's most prominently known for Mufasa, The Sandlot, Field of Dreams, things like that. He's known for having this really booming, resonant voice, but it's really, really low. And it's so sad that we're in the era right now where all of these like beloved actors from the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, things like that, they're all starting to pass away, and it's really sad. But I mean, that comes with it. Sometimes it's an unfortunate fact of life that everybody has to live with, I guess. Number 2, Pat Sajak officially took his final spin on Wheel of Fortune. He is the host of Wheel of Fortune. He is retiring. He's announced his retirement at the beginning of the season, but apparently Wheel of Fortune seasons are really, really long. So he is stepping down as the host of Wheel of Fortune. I think Vanna White is still staying for at least a little bit longer. But Pat Sajak will still continue to host Celebrity Wheel of Fortune until that season is done. And then at the end of that, Ryan Seacrest is going to be taking over as the host of Wheel of Fortune. So Pat Sajak is one of the last remaining classic game show hosts. Like, you had your Alex Trebeks and your Bob Barkers, both of which have passed. And so at least Pat Sajak is able to end it on his terms as opposed to nature taking it from him, I guess. He would not want to, he would probably like to keep it going. Like, retirement's probably not easy for him, but it's a lot. It's a lot of work. So I'm happy to see where Wheel of Fortune goes in the future with Ryan Seacrest. It's always been one of my favorite game shows. It's basically Hangman, but you win money. And so it's a good time. That is another slightly sad thing, but it's cool that we're going into another era of Wheel of Fortune. And so we'll see where all of that goes. And then number 3, in Indonesia, there is a zoo that has a 3-month-old baby pygmy hippo that is getting a lot of attention recently in the media. And she's so cute. Her name is Mudang, and she is a little pygmy hippo baby. And she's about the size of a glorified rugby ball, I guess. I don't really know. Like a watermelon was where she was at 2 months. She's slightly bigger, but she's really small. And this very specific zoo in Indonesia, they only let her out for about 15 minutes at a time because people keep throwing things at her, and it's really sad. But she's just living her best life in the zoo. It's so interesting that we are able to have some of these animals. If you've ever seen a giraffe baby at a zoo, that's always really cool. If you see a baby monkey or something, that's also cool. But bear cubs and giraffe kids are so cool to see in the real life, in person, and things like that. So if you ever get the chance to fly to Indonesia, there is a baby pygmy hippo that might be on display. I don't know. If you look up Mudang the pygmy hippo, you'll get some pictures, and she's so cute. It's great. And then there's other zoo animals that have been taking the world by storm right now too, and that's super cool to see. I'm a big creature guy, as you all probably know at this point, but she is she's just chilling. She's just wanting to be a hippo, and everybody's not wanting her to just be a hippo, and that's a little sad. But that's going to do it for this week's edition of 3 Things You Need to Know. But that's going to do it for this week's edition of the For the Gram podcast. If you liked what you heard, feel free to give me some feedback. I have an Instagram at forthegrahampod, all lowercases, no spaces. And I also have an email address at forthegrahampod@gmail.com. I really appreciate any feedback you guys are willing to give me. It helps me out a ton in the making of this show. I hope you all enjoyed this week's episode, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks for listening.